Hello, church family. Welcome to today's Sunday school lesson. We are in session 1 of our new quarterly looking at the book of Jeremiah and Lamentations, both books authored by Jeremiah. Jeremiah is one of our 3 major prophets, and he is known for his prophecy in a time when people didn't want to hear prophecies. Uh, he was told as much by God in his calling that the people would fight against him. They would not want to listen. And God says, "It will be okay because I will be with you. But just know you're going to be speaking to people who don't want to be spoken to." And so there is a lot of, in Jeremiah's writings, there's a lot of this sentiment of beating one's head against a wall. He cries out to the Lord. That's why he wrote the book of Lamentations, the way to lament over a fallen kingdom and being unable to reach them, even though that was the task he was given. So we are in this first session. It's entitled "Prepares," and we're going to be looking at how God prepares his people to represent him in this world. And we're going to be looking at Jeremiah chapter 1, verses 4 through 19. So let's just go ahead and ask that question. How does God prepare his people for his service? In what ways does he do it? How does he equip the called? We've heard this saying before. God doesn't. I apologize. My allergies are acting up if I sound a little stuffy. So, in what ways does God prepare his people for his service? We have heard the saying, God doesn't always call the equipped, he equips the called. Those he has called, he will give the tools to do the job he's called them to do. So, preparation, when we are coming up with how to do a plan, how to do something, preparation can often be the biggest impact of how well that plan is executed. If we don't prepare very far in advance, we won't really know what to do when challenges arise. If everything goes smoothly and there are no challenges, then great. Then you probably had preparation and were able to meet the challenges so that they didn't seem like challenges in the moment. But if you don't prepare when those challenges arise, it will be very hard to pivot. It will be very hard to make another game plan in order to move past whatever roadblock or obstacle you face with whatever it may be. So preparing for a task also is dependent on how important the task is. Our preparation is dependent on the importance of the task. A pre-med student is going to prepare more for their exams, their final exams, to get into medical school than someone who is taking a daily quiz in freshman English. The importance of the daily grade versus the entrance exam into medical school will be that there's a big deficit between the two. And so there's more importance, more priority, more challenge, more preparation needed for that medical exam. So God desires to make himself known to all the nations through his people, and he takes special care in preparing his people for this vital mission. So our context today is how God prepares Jeremiah for his ministry in Israel during the time of King Josiah and in a very tumultuous time, as we'll see in our context. So Jeremiah began his ministry in the 13th year of the reign of Judah's king Josiah. We've looked at Josiah when we looked at the books of First and Second Kings. I don't remember which book Josiah was in predominantly. I believe it was First Kings, but I could very well be wrong, so please don't quote me. But anyway, Jeremiah began his ministry in the 13th year of the reign of King Josiah, about 627 BC. So this is 630 years, give or take, before the birth of Christ. And this is a very turbulent time for the Near East, for all of what we would call the Near East, the Middle East, where Israel is today, because there were several world powers all at play, and they all wanted this lush, land around the Mediterranean, and they were all fighting for it because it was good for growing crops and it was healthy land. And they all wanted a piece of the pie, and Israel is smack dab in the middle of it, being beset on all sides. So the Assyrian Empire was the dominant world power during this time, and then the king of Assyria died, and so the Babylonians were able to declare independence from Assyria whenever the king of Assyria died. And then they began to fight against the Assyrians, and the cities of Assyria began to fall to the Babylonians. So the Babylonian Empire starts to take over. And so then Egypt begins to fight with the Assyrians because the Pharaoh Necho II is his name mentioned in our text. He was scared of the Medes and the Babylonians, so he's fighting with the Assyrians, forming an alliance there. And so on his way to them, Josiah of Judah intercepted Pharaoh's army. Josiah wanted to prevent Egypt's ability to help the Assyrians who had brought such devastation upon Judah. So Josiah did not want Egypt to help the Assyrians because the Assyrians had oppressed Judah so much. And so it was Second Kings, because we know that the split has happened at this point. So Josiah was around in Second Kings. I was wrong in thinking he was in First Kings. So Josiah was mortally wounded in a battle against the Assyrians and the Egyptians, and Jehoaz became king after him. And so the Egyptians and the Assyrians were unsuccessful in taking Haran, the city that they were trying to take back from the Babylons. And so on his way back to Egypt, Pharaoh Necho II took King Jehoaz captive and made Jehoiakim king of Judah. So he instilled his own king in Judah. So then later in 605 BC, the Babylonians and the Medes, under the leadership of Nebuchadnezzar, a name that we know, decidedly defeat the Egyptians and the Assyrians. So this is 22 years later. The Assyrians were annihilated, but some Egyptians were able to retreat, and then Nebuchadnezzar pursued the fleeing Egyptians. When he reached Jerusalem, he received word of his father's death. Nebuchadnezzar's father had died and returned to Babylon, but before he left Jerusalem, before he went back to Babylon, he made Jehoiakim swear allegiance to Babylon and implemented the first 3 deportations of exiles to Babylon. So this is when Nebuchadnezzar began taking exiles from Judah and deporting them into Babylon, taking citizens of Jerusalem and into Babylon. And during all of this, Jeremiah is the prophet to Israel. And so he's having to deal with all of this tumult, all of this craziness, all of this unrest, and everyone is capturing everyone and fighting against everyone else, and it just would be madness to live during Jeremiah's time, and it would be madness trying to be the voice of reason, the voice of the Lord to the people of Israel while all this is going around the kingdom of Judah. All right, so starting in our text, this is verse 4 of chapter 1. We're going to read all the way down to verse 19. The word of the Lord came to me. This is Jeremiah speaking. The word of the Lord came to me. I chose you before I formed you in the womb. I set you apart before you were born. I anointed you a prophet to the nations. But I protested, "Oh no, Lord God, look, I don't know how to speak since I'm only a youth." And then the Lord said to me, "Do not say I am only a youth, for you will go to everyone I send you to and speak whatever I tell you. Do not be afraid of anyone, for I will be with you to rescue you. This is the Lord